Imagine standing in the middle of the Amazon rainforest. Around you there are millions of trees, thousands of rivers, and more fresh water than anywhere else on Earth. But what if I told you that one of the Amazon's greatest secrets isn't above the ground? It's hidden almost 4 kilometers beneath your feet. For decades, scientists searched for oil beneath the Amazon. Instead, they may have uncovered something almost nobody imagined. A massive underground flow of water stretching for nearly 6,000 kilometers across Brazil. Many people now call it the Hamza River. But is it really a river? Or is the truth even more fascinating? Today we're uncovering one of Brazil's greatest hidden mysteries. Chapter 1. The Amazon's biggest secret. When most people think about Brazil, they imagine beaches, football, carnival, or maybe the Amazon River. The Amazon is the largest river on Earth by volume. Every second, it pours around 209,000 cubic meters of water into the Atlantic Ocean. It is so powerful that fresh water can be detected far into the ocean. For centuries, explorers believed they had discovered nearly everything about this incredible river. They were wrong, because beneath the world's largest rainforest, another enormous body of water was quietly moving. Not where anyone expected, not on the surface, hidden deep underground, and nobody knew it existed. Chapter 2. An impossible discovery. The discovery didn't begin with explorers. It didn't begin with satellites, and it certainly didn't begin with divers. It actually started with oil. During the 1970s and 1980s, Petrobras drilled hundreds of deep wells across the Amazon basin while searching for oil and natural gas. Most people assumed those wells had already revealed everything they could, but decades later, a scientist looked at the same information with completely different eyes. His name was Vilya Manafal Hamza, a geophysicist working at Brazil's National Observatory. Instead of searching for oil, he studied heat. Every deep well records underground temperatures. Normally, heat follows predictable patterns, but these wells showed something unusual. Something didn't make sense. The temperatures suggested that enormous amounts of water were moving deep beneath the Amazon. Not in caves, not inside giant tunnels, but slowly flowing through porous sedimentary rocks. At first, it sounded impossible. How could such a gigantic underground flow remain hidden for millions of years without anyone noticing? The answer surprised even scientists. Chapter 3. The Investigation. Hamza and his research team analyzed information from 241 deep wells. Each one acted like a tiny window into the Earth's interior. Piece by piece, a picture began to emerge. The underground temperatures weren't random. They formed a massive pattern, a pattern stretching almost the entire length of the Amazon basin, from the foothills of the Andes all the way toward the Atlantic Ocean. The deeper they looked, the clearer the evidence became. Something enormous was transporting heat underground, and the only explanation that fit the data was moving water. Lots of it, hidden thousands of meters below the rainforest. But here's where the story becomes even more interesting. Because despite what headlines often claim, scientists still debate whether calling it a river is technically correct. And that changes everything. Chapter 4. Is it really a river? The moment scientists announced the discovery, headlines around the world exploded. A giant river has been found beneath the Amazon. It sounded like something from a science fiction movie. People imagined an enormous underground tunnel, filled with rushing water, almost like a second Amazon hidden beneath the rainforest. But that isn't what scientists actually found. The truth is much more fascinating. The Hamza River isn't a river in the way most of us imagine one. There are no giant caves, no underground waterfalls, no hidden boats sailing beneath Brazil. Instead, the water moves slowly through tiny spaces between porous sedimentary rocks. Imagine pouring water onto a sponge. The water doesn't create a tunnel. It slowly spreads through millions of microscopic spaces. Now imagine a sponge thousands of kilometers long, buried 4 kilometers underground. That's much closer to what scientists believe exists beneath the Amazon. Chapter 5. How big is it? Even after understanding that it's not a traditional river, its size is almost impossible to imagine. Researchers estimate that the underground flow stretches for nearly 6,000 kilometers. That's roughly the same length as the Amazon River itself. But here's something even more surprising. The underground flow may extend across a region hundreds of kilometers wide. Not because there's one gigantic tunnel, but because water moves through an enormous volume of porous rock. The scale is breathtaking. If you could somehow see through the Earth's crust, you would discover an invisible world stretching beneath one of the most famous forests on our planet. And then comes perhaps the strangest fact of all. Despite its incredible size, the Hamza River moves so slowly that you would barely notice it moving at all. Chapter 6. The slowest river on Earth. When we think about rivers, we imagine flowing water, strong currents, fast-moving streams. The Amazon itself races toward the Atlantic Ocean every second. The Hamza doesn't. Scientists estimate that its movement is incredibly slow. So slow that in some places, it travels only a few meters over long periods compared with surface rivers. This isn't because there's very little water. It's because moving through solid rock takes an enormous amount of time. Every tiny pore becomes part of an incredibly slow journey toward the Atlantic Ocean. In other words, the Hamza behaves less like a surface river and more like a gigantic underground circulation system. Hidden, silent, patient, perhaps it has been moving this way for millions of years. Chapter 7. Why did nobody find it before? If something this enormous exists, why did nobody discover it centuries ago? The answer is surprisingly simple, because no human has ever seen it directly. Everything scientists know comes from indirect evidence: deep wells, temperature measurements, rock analysis, mathematical models. It's like solving a giant puzzle without ever opening the box. Each oil well drilled decades ago became a tiny clue. One clue meant almost nothing. But when researchers combined data from hundreds of wells, a hidden pattern appeared. A pattern impossible to ignore. Sometimes, history's greatest discoveries don't happen because someone digs deeper. They happen because someone looks differently at information that was already there. This discovery wasn't created by new technology. It was created by a new way of thinking. The evidence had existed for decades. Nobody connected the dots until one scientist finally did. Chapter 8. The Scientific Debate. By now, you might be wondering, if no one has ever seen the Hamza River, how can scientists be sure it exists? The answer lies in how science works. Scientists rarely rely on a single piece of evidence. Instead, they combine many independent observations until a clear picture begins to emerge. In the case of the Hamza River, researchers analyzed underground temperatures, rock formations, pressure data, and mathematical models built from hundreds of deep oil wells. Together, these clues revealed something extraordinary: a vast underground flow of water moving beneath the Amazon basin. But here's where things become interesting. Not every scientist agrees with calling it a river. Some geologists argue that the word creates the wrong image. When most people hear the word river, they imagine flowing water, visible currents, and a defined channel. The Hamza has none of these. Instead, its water slowly moves through porous layers of rock over geological timescales. That's why many researchers prefer to describe it as a deep groundwater flow system rather than a traditional river. And yet, whether we call it a river or not, its existence remains one of Brazil's most fascinating geological discoveries. Chapter 9. Why this discovery matters. At first, it might sound like nothing more than an interesting scientific curiosity. But discoveries like this completely change how scientists understand our planet. The Hamza helps researchers study how groundwater circulates beneath one of the largest sedimentary basins on Earth. It provides valuable information about heat flow, rock permeability, and the geological evolution of the Amazon over millions of years. It also reminds us of something extraordinary. Even today, in the 21st century, our planet still holds secrets hidden far beneath our feet. The Amazon isn't only mysterious because of what grows above the ground. Some of its greatest mysteries are buried thousands of meters below it. Think about this for a second. We've mapped the moon. We've sent spacecraft beyond our solar system. We've photographed distant galaxies. And yet, we are still discovering enormous hidden systems beneath one of Earth's most famous forests. Sometimes, the greatest mysteries are far away. They're right beneath us. Chapter 10. What else is hidden under Brazil? The Hamza River raises an even bigger question. If something this massive remained unnoticed for so long, what else could still be hidden beneath Brazil? Unknown cave systems, ancient geological structures, hidden mineral deposits, underground water reservoirs. Scientists continue exploring, and with every new discovery, Brazil becomes even more extraordinary. Because the deeper we look, the more we realize we've only begun to understand this country. So, is the Hamza really a river, The answer depends on how you define the word. If you're expecting an underground Amazon filled with boats and waterfalls, the answer is no. But if you understand it as a gigantic underground flow of water, stretching nearly 6,000 kilometers beneath one of the largest forests on Earth, then yes, the Hamza may be one of the most incredible hidden natural systems ever identified beneath Brazil. And perhaps one of the least known. Brazil is full of places that seem impossible, but sometimes the most unbelievable places can't even be seen. And if you think this discovery changed the way we see Brazil, wait until you discover the secret map that transformed a small Portuguese colony into the 5th largest country on Earth, a map that changed history forever. See you in the next episode of Brazil Unknown.